Chapter 11:51. Tens of thousands of burning iron lights rose into the sky and blended into the vast sea of stars. As the countless stars rotated, the radiant lights were as taut as bowstrings. Thus, the cold, killing intent spilled down on the mortal world below, spreading far and wide. The moment he was locked on by the countless lights, even Woodman was stunned for a moment and fell into a daze. His empty mind only had time to think of a curse word. F***CK. What on earth happened? What kind of scene was this? Although the momentum of that attack just now was terrifying, to him it was nothing more than a petty trick that was not worthy of being elegant. However, now that the entire secret apparatus was operating under his will, it had expanded to a scale that made his hair stand on end. It was so huge that even he could feel a trace of trembling. What the hell? Was there a F***king problem somewhere? Wasn't he still a great seeming the last time he saw him? Or could it be that he had actually not died for 2 months, but for 20 or 30 years? In the blink of an eye, he had become a duck? But even if someone were to tell him that someone could kill him, then use the prelude to the War of the Worlds as a prelude to the War of the Worlds, then rely on firepower to directly destroy Nature's fleet, and also bring back a few thousand dead ascendants from hell, he would probably scoff. Are you kidding me? Is this reasonable? But now he finally remembered that there were some people in this world who existed, and that was the proof of a logic. For example, the Astronomy Society, the Republic, and why sure. At this moment, not only were the countless ascendants in hell shocked, even Huaisher was a little stunned by the terrifying efficiency of the secret apparatus. With just the appearance of his will, the stars automatically rotated, carrying out his orders, transforming his thoughts, and extracting endless power to create this jaw-dropping spectacle. It was too easy. The whole process didn't even delay any expansion and development. It was as easy and simple as going to the convenience store downstairs to help Huaisher bring back a bottle of Coke. The 24 solar terms, the Pantheon Temple, and even the solar ephemeris, all of the origin substances emitted by the secret instruments and miraculous engravings, as well as all of the visible but insignificant energy within the reality realm, were carefully picked out like grains of sand and gathered in his hand one by one, forming a towering mountain. Many as one, this was great seeming, through constant adjustments to ensure the operation of the cycle. All of the power was linked together with the same axis, the same will, and gathered in one's hands, using one's own will to change everything before one's eyes. This was Yun Zhongjuan. In that moment of absent-mindedness, Huaisher almost suspected that he was leaning against a super-large, luxurious version of the ultimate and the celestial palace. But the moment he reacted, he suddenly realized that it was too late. Weren't the ultimate and the celestial palace miracles created by imitating the great secret instrument, what he had been learning, trying, and understanding all this time seemed to be the prerequisite for mastering this great secret instrument. Now, when he truly held the great secret instrument in his hands, he was shocked by the nature of his own power. He seemed to hear the happy laughter of a black-hearted woman in his ears. She was so proud. It was just a brief moment of absent-mindedness, less than a snap of a finger, flashed by. Now, with Huaisher's will, the iron stars fell. The thunder in the night sky surged, and countless mournful white waves had already spread out. Those burning stars had a sharp edge, tearing through the darkness of the night, bursting forth with dazzling light. Wherever it passed, everything was cleanly sliced apart, leaving behind a perfectly straight mark. Pointing at the ground, tens of thousands of marks intersected at the same point, where Woodman was. Now, the starry sky revolved and threw a flaming sword at the mortal world. Huaisher, you mother*****. Woodman didn't have time to curse anymore. He quickly raised his hand, and the flowing gray mist once again condensed into a massive pair of wings and propped them up. The iron light that had converged into a torrent stagnated for a moment. However, this stagnation couldn't last for long, because the number of attacks was too great, and the power had risen to a new level. The scale and distance needed to exhaust the kinetic energy given to them were too great and could no longer be contained in a single wing. Now, the gray mist that had condensed into a wing surged like a tide, transforming into a turbulent flow. As the hurricane spread, the torrent of iron light continuously sank into the gray mist, and the gray mist was like the entrance to another world. No matter how many attacks came, it remained motionless. Probably only the sound of cloth tearing could be heard. The gray mist wings were constantly shrinking, revealing the heavily torn earth below and the lava spewing out of the earth's crust. Under the evaporation of the iron light, the haze quickly dissipated. Perhaps one or two was just a joke, but under the consumption of the torrent, even Woodman had no choice but to use all his strength to defend himself. Even so, it was still beyond his power. Behind the thin gray mist, the handsome face was already covered in cracks. "Stop!" He roared angrily, raised his right hand, and held up the falling stars. Countless burning radiances were extinguished bit by bit, but there were even more sharp blades that pierced through the defenses and stabbed into the skinny body. In the end, the thunder gradually dissipated. On the devastated earth, Woodman expressionlessly stretched out his hand, pulled out the few blades that pierced his body, and crushed them. A smile appeared on his spasming face. He was so angry. "You're really something, kid." Sparse gray mist spread out from his wounds. In the lingering mist, it was as if a new pair of giant wings had spread out in the darkness. It covered the sky and covered the sun. What was even more shocking was the flowing blood on the ground. In the boiling blood, the outline of a giant snake slowly rose from it. A ferocious might that was not inferior to that of a ruler was revealed. The giant snake hissed and slowly rose up with the dignified, godlike solidifier facing Huaisher from afar. Beneath his feet, the giant scarlet snake that was mixed with gray and black also spread out 11 strange giant wings. It twisted rapidly in the darkness, head and tail connected, just like the light will behind the Buddha, but it was so ferocious. TSK, I thought it was a little bastard raised by Russell, but I didn't expect. I take back my words. Huaisher, you're stronger than your teacher at this age. Woodman spat out the blood in his lungs and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes surged with ferocity. "It's a pity that you're not strong enough." In that instant, the giant snake totem rotated, and a fierce light suddenly surged in the surging waves. It absorbed the power from hell without any hindrance, and in an instant the projection of the entire abyss shook violently. Then the giant snake opened its mouth and spewed out a dark torrent that penetrated the heavens and the earth. As if a red-hot iron rod had suddenly pierced into a bucket, there was a boiling explosion in the air. The light of destruction rumbled forward. At this moment, the analysis program of countless probes sounded the highest level of alarm. On the huge screen in the decision-making room, countless analyses and information from other organizations appeared on it, but in the end, everything related to the essence was almost hidden in a mystery. It was as if it was blocked by a certain program, making it difficult to display. Secret, damn it. Countless people stared with their eyes wide open, waiting for the results. But now they realized that what blocked the analysis was actually the orders and authority left behind by the Utopia. But soon, a further analysis from the bronze, I was sent over. The results this time were even more confusing. Preliminary analysis of the source of the stigmata, celestial genealogy. Celestial genealogy? Why the F asterisk CK is its celestial genealogy again. For a moment, countless angry gazes looked at Russell. Russell was stunned for a moment, and as if he had come to his senses, he patted his head and revealed a weak, helpless, and confused look. It seems like there is such a thing. The old tortoise smacked his lips and shrugged helplessly. Look at me. How could I forget? No one answered. Everyone knew that the 9 paths claimed by celestial genealogy were a mess. There were 3 different versions, and each of them seemed to make sense. Just after everyone accepted this setting for so many years, this group of people actually found half a path to paradise from under the box. So the 9 paths that they claimed were for the group, right? Weren't there hundreds of trainees who were studying how to sing and dance rap every day? No one knew how many tricks the Utopia had up their sleeves, but no matter what, they made sense. Eternity, Heaven's Inquisition, Spirit Marrow, Change, Dusk, Maintenance, Origin, Cycle. Just like what Russell had told Huaishur before. These were the 8 fixed paths of ascension that the Utopia had already determined before the fall of Heavenly State. As for the missing 9th path, it was declared a secret to the outside world. In fact, within the Utopia, the choice of the 9th path of ascension was quite different because its nature and origin were too sensitive. They were hesitant about whether to make it public, or they could simply replace it. The path to paradise was prepared for this. Unfortunately, before the decision was made, the Utopia had already been destroyed by the impact of the Deep Siphon. Only a group of lonely souls and wild ghosts lingered on the ruins of the past. Looks like it's still not enough to grind the bones and scatter the ashes. Russell sighed softly and muttered to himself, I have to do it more thoroughly next time. When he looked at Woodman on the screen, the old man, who had always been elegant, no longer smiled. Instead, some kind of heart-palpitating coldness and cruelty appeared on his face. His killing intent was ferocious. He originally thought that when Woodman's main body was killed by him, everything related to him had been completely severed. He did not expect to be able to reappear here, the dark side of the Utopia, the dark history of the celestial genealogy. It was not that it was deliberately mysterious, but that it could not be made public. It was the idea of the celestial genealogy, an unfinished creation. Before the White Crown King fell asleep, he secretly cooperated with the Pioneer Association to target Hell using the former Holy Spirit genealogy and the heritage of the gods to create a weapon against Hell. Its essence was taken from the Holy Spirit genealogy before it split, and its structure was completed by the White Crown King. Its essence was the combination of all the angels of death, such as Jaina, Abaddon, Mananhanvit, Metatro, and so on. The large group that was equipped with it was the Hell Heavenly Army, the Purification Army, made of countless death row prisoners and coagulators, transforming them like consumables. It made all sinners fight with other sinners in hell, and in order to do evil in the present world, all the mud that could not be supported by the wall was used as trash and turned into a force to guard the present world. Celestial genealogy, path of original sin. The peak of this path, the true body of the 5th rank, was the power that Woodman was displaying right now. Samael, the angel of death. Samael. Now, in the black fog gathered by all the death, the giant serpent wheel that represented the essence of Samael's death slowly rose. The torrent that brewed endless anger and death burst out, piercing into the realm of the present world like a sharp blade. Countless ascendants instantly felt the trembling from the bottom of their hearts, the fear from the soul, and the fear of death itself. Except for Huaishur, from the beginning to the end, between heaven and earth, surrounded by the stars, Huaishur's expression was only indifferent. Death. Could it be that something that was as common as eating a meal was worth talking about? It was not worth mentioning at all. When the king of Danbo raised his hand again, the revolving stars suddenly calmed down. The great secret apparatus that had been expanded to the limit shone in the night sky, under the dual operation of Great Siming and Yun Zhongjuan. Everything returned to the framework and guidance of the Creator. The entire present world was connected into one in an instant. It was in Huaishi's hand. Endless weight was placed in his soul, and in just an instant, it seemed to completely evaporate his soul. But that was all it took to stop him. An unprecedented understanding emerged in his heart. When Huaishi's character was connected to the great secret apparatus as a component, his role was no longer to fight and kill, but to connect everything that the great secret apparatus passed through into one. Let the power of the present world face the enemies of hell in a way as a whole. In other words, in a certain sense, the present Su Yangyi was a human-shaped rainbow bridge. Even if he could not deliver the power of all places across the sky and achieve the effect of the stairway to heaven just as a glue and a buffer zone, it was enough to integrate all the power of the four sides under the system of the great secret apparatus. Now, with his will, radiance rose from all directions. Like a giant pillar, it held up the sky. Everything resonated. Fusang in the 24 solar terms, the Great Pyramid under the solar calendar, the church rampart built on the border, and even the pantheon that gathered endless miracles. Now, under the guidance of the outpost, they formed a whole. Everything rotated. This was the luxurious gold version of Supreme Symphony. The huge projection of Fusang flashed around Huaishi's body. Countless lives appeared and disappeared, affecting the invisible 24 solar terms and the rotation of the four seasons. The invisible barrier blocked Samuel's attack and quickly consumed Woodman's power. The projection of the divine calendar appeared out of thin air, with Liz's cold snort. The sharp sun from the center defeated the torrent of death and swallowed it. The radiance of the pantheon gathered all the dissipating disasters. In a short moment, he casually borrowed the power from all sides to eliminate Woodman's attack. He even converted the power and reloaded it into the interior of the ivory tower. But this time, Huaishi ignored Woodman's gloomy expression. He threw those unimportant things to the back of his mind and did not even bother to look at them. He just smiled and spread his arms. He listened to the countless voices from the stars. Countless crisp voices echoed. Countless frames and laws extended from the sky and connected to the four pillars established by the major lineages at that moment. The structure of the great mystic Zarathustra was completely completed. In the deep underground of the present realm, the vast light of the endless stars completely illuminated the darkness. The power from the fragment of Gaia poured endlessly into the crack, and the power from the present realm, through this resonance, turned into a rainbow-like bridge, crossing the endless depths and descending. The second project, Rainbow Bridge, was completed under the infusion of endless miracles and power in the center of the great mystic ritual. The control center specially built for Huaishi quickly unfolded. A solemn throne appeared behind Huaishi. It connected him to it. It was like welcoming the soul of the great mystic ritual into the stars in the sky. In the roar from hell, countless laws pulled the throne and slowly rose toward the starry sky. Ascension begin. Chapter 1152. It was so fast that it was unimaginable. In less than half an hour, the great mystic Zarathustra had covered the entire realm with terrifying efficiency, leaving no time for the abyssal rulers to react. It was like a chain reaction. That kind of speed could no longer be described as a domino. It was more like a fuse. There was no detour, and no precious power was wasted. The moment it was ignited, everything was led to the end at lightning speed. For this day, the continuation court had been preparing for decades. Considering all the situations and accidents, They prepared for the worst and prepared for the best. They also made many plans and implemented them accordingly. More than 16 plans were in the hands of the creator, Nakajima, but this time, even Nakajima was shocked by this surprise. Not letting anyone down, Huaishur had achieved the responsibility entrusted to him at a speed that exceeded everyone's expectations. Now, the foundation of the major lineages had been stabilized. Fusang, the Pantheon, the Sacred Coffin, the Solar Ephemeris, and even the 6 paths of reincarnation that filled the interior had turned themselves into pillars to support the world created by humans. The foundation was established. Now, relying on the resonance between the great mystic ritual of the same realm, a steady stream of power was being poured into the stars. The majestic power operated in the stars, leading the center to rise toward the vast sea of stars. It brought Huaishur's soul into the vast world within the fragment. It was truly endowing it with a soul. At that time, the abyss would no longer have a foothold. When they woke up from the misdirection of the present realm and the various lineages, no matter which side of the ruler, they could no longer sit and watch the completion of the ascension, no longer caring about any consequences. They burst out with all their power, abandoned the opponents in front of them and the siege from all sides, and rushed straight to the throne that was rising under the starry sky. At this moment, in the desert that was full of rifts, a hurricane suddenly spread. A deep depression appeared on the ground again. In the deepest part of the depression, the skinny old man turned back and looked at the distant starry sky, frowning slightly. The moment his back foot lifted slightly, there was a whistling sound in the wind. In the distance, a rift opened up from the ground again, extending straight toward the heretic king. The heretic king turned around and stomped his foot on the ground once again. With a dull thud, the expansion of the Rift Valley came to an abrupt halt. "Where are you looking at, Senior? We haven't finished fighting yet." On the other side of the canyon, the blood-stained shadow emerged from the dust and grinned. "Or are you going to be merciful and spare my life?" "He's not dead yet." So annoying. The heretic monarch looked at his opponent expressionlessly. Unlike his youthful appearance, his slightly aged face was already graying, and slight wrinkles could be seen at the corners of his eyes. However, the smile on his face became even more frivolous and licentious, and he was wearing the same colorful clothes that he used to wear when he was at the Yoshihara Tavern. There was even a lacquered black comb that came out of nowhere in between her long hair. However, such an elegant demeanor was destroyed by the wound in his chest. Blood continued to flow out of the wound, and the internal organs were completely messed up. Their positions were completely out of place. Inside, the only thing missing was the thing that kept beating. Heart. It was crushed. Half an hour ago. However, he still seemed to be alive and kicking, as if nothing had happened. It was as if he had only lost 2 strands of hair, and now he was glancing at the heretic king's neck. It was a shallow wound that almost pierced through his throat. As expected of Senior. How troublesome. Kamikaze sighed, regretfully. "I thought that we had met our match and were stuck together like glue. I didn't expect our relationship to be so fragile. Senior, are you going to abandon me just because of a small problem? Aren't you a little too heartless? If you want to die, you can do so at any time." The heretic king ignored the teasing and mockery in his words, and only warned him coldly. "Don't get in the way. Don't worry. As the saying goes, fate is determined by the heavens. Since Senior wants to leave, I won't cry and beg you to stay. You can leave now." Kamikaze stroked the beard on his chin and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he laughed and was full of anticipation. "But, Senior, will you be at ease to show your back to someone like me? Even if it's just for a moment." At his waist, The sword had already been sheathed, but it was still crying out hungrily. An endless, ferocious aura was bound in the darkness, and it kept rising. It couldn't wait any longer. In the distance, the starry sky swayed. A ray of light flew down, and the urging of the golden dawn came again. It was crushed by the heretic king expressionlessly. "Look, someone's getting impatient. Hurry up and invite him in, Senior." Kamikaze stretched out his hand and pressed on the hilt of his sword. His expectant smile became twisted and ferocious, revealing the nature of an evil spirit. "I can't wait any longer. I'll send you on your way." In the dead silence, the heretic king didn't speak. He only gently exhaled the breath in his lungs. Once again, he clenched his right fist and raised it, as if he was holding a pestle. He grasped the invisible power of the heavens and the earth and aimed it at the smiling face from afar. In the dark night sky above them, a loud noise suddenly sounded. It was the ruler from hell rushing past. The power of the storm totem flashed, and the endless lightning flew straight to the stars in the distance without stopping. All that was left was a loud noise and a flash of light. It illuminated the eyes of the two people. There was also the same cruel expression. The land that had been reduced to a desert once again wailed. Under the collision of souls and wills, the land cracked inch by inch and ripples spread, disregarding life and death. In that instant, the battle to the death began once again. And such a battle had now spread throughout the entire reality. Everything was shrouded in the counterattack of the abyss. The intensity of the battle was rising at a terrifying speed. The deaths and sacrifices could no longer be counted. Instead, they became a series of constantly expanding numbers that appeared in front of the chess players on both sides. Even if it was just a gamble, a battle that was like a military exercise, the constantly rising loss rate still made people's hair stand on end. There were even people who rejoiced. This was just the evolution of the recorded events. If it was real, how many souls could bear the weight behind the number of sacrifices and losses? At this moment, the center of the battle had slipped from the hands of the chess players and landed on the shoulders of the chess pieces. On the throne that gradually rose to the starry sky, Huaisher felt his soul expanding at an unprecedented speed. When he closed his eyes, he could still see tens of thousands of miles away, overlooking the countless battles and killings. Even if he didn't listen, the wails and roars in the wind never stopped. The wails of the turmoil of all things echoed in his ears. 2 palms and 10 fingers. Wherever they passed, everything seemed to be in the palm of his hand. Without needing to take a step, everything was already far away under his feet. Endless brilliance gradually embraced him, gently holding his arm and bringing him to the sea of stars. Above his head, the stars revolved. Without his orders, the brilliance continued to descend. The framework and laws covered the land of the reality. Storms and meteorites fell, changing the positions of rivers and lakes, filling up rifts, uplifting mountains and rivers, sprinkling rain on the heads of allies, and pouring lava and raging fire into hell. The entire reality realm had become a genuine war fortress. At this moment, the revolving stars suddenly stagnated. The sound of storms and tides suddenly came. The thunder of hell spread, and the giant pillar of the storm totem appeared in the sky. The Demon King, the Frost Moon descendant, smashed into the sea of stars like a meteorite, breaking through the layers of defense and breaking into the core. The suppression of the 24 solar terms, the artillery positions on the ground, the other ascendants that rose into the air, and all the attacks launched by the counterattacks and defensive measures fell on her body. They were as dense as rain, and like rain, they could only fall in vain in front of the body that was covered in countless glorious wounds. She was basically unharmed, and the ruler had already broken into the outer domain of the throne. The frost and moonlight on the blood-stained halberd in her hand appeared. It flew out of her hand and pierced straight toward Huaishur. At such a close distance, seeing Huaishur's face, the Frost Moon's eyebrows raised slightly, and a regretful expression appeared. What a pity that this wasn't a real battle. What a pity that such a head and corpse couldn't be used as a collection to show off at the banquet. Otherwise, with such a good color, she could definitely make a wine vessel that could be handed down for generations. But then, between her and the good color discovery that she liked, a disgusting face suddenly appeared. It had a bronze complexion, rough skin, a strong body, and well-defined muscles. It had a pair of bull-like eyes, and an excited smile on the corner of its mouth for some reason. Put down that Huaishur, and come at me if you have any problems. Quafu, the burly giant, who was not inferior to the dwarf king, suddenly appeared in midair. He threw out the fishing rod in his hand, and a thin line easily wrapped around the halberd. Under the pull of the long rod made of Shoyang mountain copper, the halberd was thrown out toward the Frost Moon. Unfortunately, it wasn't that simple. Like using an iron chopstick to poke a socket, the terrifying electric light attached to it burst out and swallowed the Quafu whole. In an instant, it was shrouded in destruction. The Frost Moon coldly snorted, caught the halberd, and rushed toward Huaishur again. But in the dissipating electric light, a thick arm suddenly stretched out, and all the electric light was torn apart wherever it passed. Then, that honest and annoying smile appeared in front of the Frost Moon again. Sister, sit down. Let's talk about our hearts, the passionate singing, the piercing of the fishing rod, and some kind of indescribable greasy feeling rushed toward her at the same time. Damn, so annoying. The Frost Moon roared and chopped down with the halberd in her hand. Go away. 3 minutes later, the Frost Moon began to regret. Why did she provoke this thing? In terms of attack, the other party couldn't be compared with the disaster of the Thunder Sea at all, but for some reason, his defense was so strong, especially with a layer of wood shell covering his whole body, which became more and more tenacious as it was destroyed. It was like a piece of sticky candy, the kind that had been chewed, and had saliva on it. Once stuck, it couldn't be shaken off. If he was just difficult to deal with, it would be fine, but he also had a mouth that kept talking. Gala, how long are you going to be stupid? The Frost Moon roared. I'm busy, don't bother me. The response was an even more impatient roar. Chapter 1153. On the other side, in the surging river of blood, skeletons continued to appear. A large group from a fallen country, the famous Bone Burial Legion, appeared here. Those countless skeletons crawled out of the river of blood and gathered in one place, piling up into a mountain, forming a strange and deformed giant skeleton. The skull, that was like a building, wore a bright crown. Dozens of arms stretched out in a disorderly manner, and the deformed legs trampled on the ground without any pattern, crawling and crawling. There was no defense, allowing the enemy to exhaust their strength and carry out attacks that overestimated their capabilities. It just moved forward, walking coldly through the tens of thousands of troops, passing through the forest-like legions and large groups of formations. Everything rotted into mud under the spreading miasma and fierce poison. Wherever it passed, its heavy body squeezed the soil and earth, digging out deep trenches. Blood surged in them, extending forward with the giant skeleton. It charged straight forward, towards the core of the present realm. It did not care about other opponents at all. It only focused on searching for traces of celestial genealogy. But now, the fortress-like skeleton in the river of blood was suddenly hugged by a pair of thick arms. It hugged it tightly, and the arms contracted inwards. Then it pulled up. The mountain formed from countless mud, and rocks actually grew limbs and took on the shape of a human. Just like that, it hugged the undying monster of hell enthusiastically, lifting it up and carrying it on its shoulders. It even patted the position of its butt twice, as if it wanted to try the feeling. The sound was crisp. Then, under the witness of the entire world, it used a standard that made one's hair stand on end. Bomb drop. In midair, the undying formed by countless skeletons fell into a daze. It only felt the hurricane blowing in its face, and the ground that was rapidly smashing towards its face. Boom! Countless bones spurted out like a waterfall and scattered. Those scattered bones quickly shrank, trying to absorb the power of the river of blood to form again. Then, everyone saw a strange smile appear on Shan Wan's blurry face. Just like that, it took 2 steps back, and another 2 steps back. It retreated 10 steps away, and then it ran towards the opponent that was rapidly recovering in front of it. Amidst the wailing of the earth's crust, he suddenly leaped up. The huge mass carried by the jump caused the ground to undulate and shake like a spring bed. In the air, the mountain giant opened its arms and legs, casting a terrifying shadow over the skull of the skeleton, causing the ferocious face to fall into a daze. After that, it was an earth-shattering fall. Meteor shower, a terrifying impact that was even more powerful than a nuclear explosion, landed on the countless skeletons. Even the river of blood was dried up by this terrifying impact, unable to continue flowing. The bones that had turned into dust quickly shrank and were reborn. Gala's face appeared among the skeletons. What the F***ck is this? Of course, it's a pure man's way of fighting. In the reborn mountain range, an old face appeared from the top, the giant of the American world. Traltacutli, he raised his thick arms and peeled off the outermost layer of soil and stone shell of the mountain range, as if he was tearing off his coat. Countless rocks quickly formed the outline of strong muscles. In accordance with his will, he put on a strong and powerful posture. He was sweating profusely. Just like that, he laughed strangely and reached out to grab the opponent in front of him. "Come on, friend, don't be in a hurry to leave." Traltacutli hugged his neck and held it tightly. He warmly invited, "Our wrestling has just begun. Get lost." Gala roared. It wasn't because he couldn't win, nor was it because of strategy or anything else, but because this old man was so strange. Is this how the wrestling in the present realm works? Why is it different from what I know? Isn't there something wrong with it? Also, I didn't King look for you. Where's Ing Fangzhou? Ing Fangzhou, where did you go, you bastard? Don't run, come out and face me. On the other side, in front of the Celestial Genealogy Outpost Network, Ing Fangzhou, who was guarding here, also felt some kind of disgust from the bottom of his heart. Right in front of him, the group leader from the Eternal World Group was wearing a solemn black suit and a pair of exquisite leather shoes. He wore gold-rimmed glasses, his hair was meticulously combed, and he was carrying a briefcase in his hand. He didn't hide at all. "Are you Ing Fangzhou?" The sales champion of the business department in the deep zone stopped in front of him. He reached out and adjusted his glasses. After taking a closer look, he showed a disdainful look. "You don't look like much." Ing Fangzhou pulled out his gun expressionlessly. He didn't even bother to respond. But then he saw the opponent in front of him suddenly take a step back. Then he pushed down the gold mountain and jade pillars. Crisp, smooth, and extremely skilled, he knelt down. With a thud, the sales champion knelt on the ground. Suddenly, tears streamed down his face. He cried and shouted. He stretched out his hands and hugged Ing Fangzhou's thigh tightly, refusing to let go. "Wait a minute, Dad." The sales champion kowtowed fiercely and shouted, "Dad, please, you are my dad. Please, take a look at our products." His tears and snot spurted out. He tried his best to plead in a hoarse voice. "Our Eternal World Group is absolutely good at a reasonable price. We are absolutely honest. Dad, we and Celestial Genealogy are old acquaintances. There is still a discount now. Go to hell. Originally, this extremely funny clown should have been completely evaporated in an instant, but when the pair of hands picked up a thick proposal and raised it in front of him, Ing Fangzhou's movements suddenly stopped. In the sales champion's cries, some kind of emotion and hesitation that shouldn't have appeared in his heart, breaking the original pure state of mind. Instead, it was replaced by a thought that made Ing Fangzhou's hair stand on end. He is so pitiful and humble. He looks very sincere. Why don't I take pity on him and take a look? Killing intent and hesitation constantly appeared on that face. Struggle. In the flattering smile, humble pleading, and the pleading of the sales champion, the pure will begin to gradually dull. Bit by bit, with difficulty, he reached out his hand towards the product catalog in front of him. He flipped open a page. Desire, endless materialistic desire, and greed emerged from the product catalog. It was sticky and wriggling, crawling along the fingers and crawling towards Ing Fangzhou's body. It seeped into his soul. Take your time. Don't worry at all. The sales champion, with tears and snot, revealed a sincere smile. He took out one thick catalog after another from the briefcase beside him. I also brought 20 different sets. Take your time to look and choose. As long as you pay a little bit of origin substance, there will be a beautiful gift package. Just like that, he happily admired the customer's appearance as he looked at the catalog, chose the products, and looked forward to the future. Take a look. In the endless materialistic desire, he gradually became addicted. He gradually overdrew. He gradually became greedy. He endlessly possessed and bought, from money to material things, to his life, to his body. In the end, he even pawned his soul. The feast of desire had just begun. Pa! A crisp sound came from Ing Fangzhou's body. The sales champion raised his head in confusion and saw that the face was cracking under the erosion of the curse of greed. However, even more greed and desire emerged from the broken face. It was like an ocean, boundless and endless. Even the sales champion was dumbfounded by the desire. He was stunned. You must be joking. Cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. He felt as if he had ignited the fuse of an explosives warehouse. The flames were clearly spreading as he had imagined. But why did he feel so terrified and uneasy? Wait a minute. Was this really the sharp blade of the utopia? Or could it be that he was mistaken? However, the opponent in front of him was clearly Ing Fangzhou. But since it was Ing Fangzhou, why was there such a huge greed and desire in the resurrected soul? It was simply insatiable. At this moment, in Ing Fangzhou's hands, even the catalog that recorded all the products and the essence of calamities in hell began to tremble violently. Chapter 1154. The distant night sky was torn apart by thunder. The pure, blazing radiance rose into the night sky, splitting open the endless darkness and penetrating the approaching dark clouds, galloping mightily. The lightning was like a plow, digging out deep fissures from the ground, and rising into the sky again, forming a cage that locked in all directions, trapping the hordes of hell and the strange, rotten giant butterflies in the clouds. In the thunder that looked down on all things, Yun Zhongjuan's figure appeared. The blazing light that filled the sky was gathered in his hand, turning into a long river that swept through the projection of the abyss. Huai Shi was subconsciously distracted and glanced at that direction, but his eyes were stung by the unpleasant lightning. He seemed to hear a cold snort from Ing Fangzhou. Just do your own thing well, and that's enough. I'll take it that you're concerned about me. Huai Shi sighed, withdrew his gaze, and focused on the operation of the great secret ritual. A shrill whistle flew past his ears, cutting off a few strands of hair and disappearing into the distant night sky. The dwarf king, Shuangyue, had fallen into a rage. The mighty power of the storm totem kept descending, but it was all in vain under Quafu's entanglement and the operation of the 24 solar terms. Now, the two sides were fighting more than 10 kilometers away. For the ruler, this distance was no different from being right in front of him. However, he couldn't get past Quafu, the meat shield, and the unreasonable fishing rod in his hand. The thin line stretched for thousands of miles, and the golden hook caught everything, whether it was all tangible weapons or invisible flames and storms. Under the pull of the hook and line, all became big fish that were hooked and could not break through the boundary. Was that supreme? Or something else? It was impossible to tell. It could only be said that it was really an eye-opener. He clearly looked like a simpleton, but this kind of terrifying skill seemed to be at his fingertips, not leaving the slightest gap for the enemy. From time to time, he would look back and give Huaishur a thumbs up, blinking and smiling brightly. The meaning was straightforward and simple. Look at me. Am I awesome? Then, when he was distracted, Shuangyue's axe directly hit his face. Metal and skull collided, bursting out a loud sound like a bell. Quafu, on the other hand, just took a step back and wiped his face, and everything was quickly restored to normal. Everything was quickly returning to normal. After attacking with all his might for so long, even a person would be exhausted to death. However, this guy's face wasn't red, nor was he panting, nor was he sweating at all. He was like a perpetual motion machine with terrifyingly high endurance. No wonder he was listed as a support in the Eastern Summer System. Huaishur couldn't help but want to exchange such a good tool for foreign exchange. The operation of the Great Secret Ritual had its own set of rules, with the Continuation Academy's infinite schemes. Huaishur didn't need to worry about the promotion process at all. All he needed to do was play his role as a mascot and be safely sent into the Great Secret Ritual's central hub. This matter would naturally be completed, which was why he dared to let his imagination run wild. But in that moment of distraction, the distant sky was suddenly ignited by a spark of fire. Then, scarlet red filled the air. The huge meteor dragged a flaming tail behind it as it fell from the night sky. Endless blood dripped from it, dyeing half of the night sky a nauseating dark red. Just like that, he brazenly barged into the realm's domain. He locked on to Huaishur. It strangely made several turns in the air, and after throwing aside all the intercepting cannons, it smashed down towards the stars. And without any warning, a huge square shield projection appeared in front of the blood-colored meteor, blocking the terrifying impact. In front of Huaishur, a trail of molten metal flashed by, wiping out countless large groups. A skinny figure had already blocked in front of him. All of the attackers were kept at bay. He wore an ancient helmet on his head, and his mane and feather crown fluttered in the wind, burning like fire. The old man was wearing heavy ring armor, with a short sword at his waist. The spear in his hand was burning with flames, and his cloak fluttered in the wind as he galloped. As he came and went, the giant beasts and hunting angels released by Paradise were torn apart and pierced through. And in the distance, the meteors and blazing lights that were constantly smashing down were all blocked by the square shield in his hand, leaving no gap for him to take advantage of. Rome's genealogy, the god of war, Mars. After 4 generations of emperors, he had been the mainstay of Rome's genealogy since 90 years ago, and now he was blocking in front of hell. He just turned around and glanced at Huaishur, nodded slightly, and did not say anything else. On his scarred face, the remaining right eye was covered in white. It had long been turbid and dim under the tempering of time, but at this moment, when facing the enemy, it burst out with a sharp glow like iron. As if tens of thousands of troops were following him, Endless phantoms filled the sky, and the thick square formation that had been passed down for thousands of years enveloped Huaishur. He was the only one left standing on top of the only gap. Expressionlessly, he killed all the solidifiers and monsters that dared to rush up. The surging river of blood swept over from the end of the sky dome. The figure of the giant blood-colored snake rose up. After breaking through Fusang's interception, the fallen country and the blessed land joined forces and rushed deep in, not caring about the price they had to pay. They attacked the foundation of the great secret apparatus. An unprecedented, terrifying pressure descended, and the flames of war spread. Almost every inch of land had been dyed red with blood, and the entire plain had become a chaotic battlefield. And more importantly, countless alarms suddenly flashed in front of Huaishur's eyes. Error reporting. Dozens of errors appeared in the originally fixed cycle between the 5 layers of domains at the same time. In addition to the black box, realm of eternity, that connected the 3 pillars in the deepest layer, there were 4 layers of domains that extended out: activity, formation, creation, and outflow. There were 7 stages of internal measurement, 36 days of functional modules, and a total of 91 internal regions. There were unfamiliar signals and permissions that were not within the scope of recognition at all. The ascension came to an abrupt end. In a daze, Huaishur discovered that another permission had appeared in the great secret apparatus. The second administrator account was rapidly stealing all of Huaishur's permissions. Not only was it usurping the control of the great secret apparatus, it was even trying to invade the Book of Destiny. What the hell? Huaishur watched as strands of darkness appeared from the outermost layer of the great secret apparatus, quickly corroding the domain of the great secret apparatus. Even the antivirus program was unable to detect it. Was this thing's firewall so fragile? But even if it could hide from the great secret apparatus's firewall, it was still unable to avoid the Book of Destiny's observation. In that instant, a new framework that had never been recorded in the great secret apparatus quietly appeared in the dense structure on the title page. Its name was World. Alistair's hoarse laughter seemed to ring in his ears once more. Under the protection of Woodman's serpent-wing halo and the strange old man's robes, countless origin substance leads extended out, entering the void and connecting to the great secret apparatus. They seeped into the cycle of the realm of reality, and that stooped body seemed to dissolve, gradually becoming thinner and thinner. In the end, only faint traces were left behind. It was as transparent as a bubble, and under the translucent body, countless laws of disaster surged, interweaving into an artificial soul that belonged to hell. Now, it finally no longer concealed its essence and origin. This was the Chosen One. Chosen One, Theon, Savior. No, its true meaning should be the Chosen One. The so-called Alistair was a combination of the abilities of all the members of the Golden Dawn, as well as all the legacies of the utopia that they had mastered and the tools and results that they had carefully created. Long before its birth, all the purposes of its design were built around the realm of reality. It was just like copying the power of the Rainbow Bridge, using disaster as the foundation to become an abyss stairway to heaven that connected countless hells. The existence of the tower was the foundation of a place that was isolated from the world. Its mission and function was to mobilize the fulcrum and center of the forces in all directions, supporting the operation of the stairway to heaven. Now that the stairway to heaven no longer existed, it could only be completely abandoned. Instead, it was replaced by the world that was built for the great secret apparatus. It was a key used to open, seize, and control the first seal, Zarathustra. At this moment, in his hand, the framework unfolded, penetrated the layers of verification from the great secret apparatus, and began to spread the poison and infection from the abyss. Reversing the nature of all frameworks towards hell, the reverse blessing was applied to the rulers. It didn't matter if it was called the Hell's Matrix or the Abyss Matrix. This was the solidified law that was meticulously built for the realm of reality. In this sudden change, not only the chess players, but even the spectators in the decision-making room fell into a daze. They didn't know whether they should be angry or glad. They were angry that those bastards from the Golden Dawn had actually come up with such a technology, but they were glad that this was only a gamble. If they didn't notice it for a moment, and it was used in the real realm of reality, of course, the difference in size between the two was more than 10,000 times, and the consequences were more than 10,000 times worse. If this place was an empty shell and a container, then the realm of reality was a heavy fruit. As long as a crack appeared in the erosion of the Golden Dawn, and it was slightly pried open, the result would be unimaginable. But now, the key was how to stop the erosion of the Golden Dawn. Even if Weisher didn't care, the great secret apparatus was definitely not a toy that could be taken advantage of. Without the support of the Land of Dreams, the enemy could only circle around the outermost layer and interfere with the process and progress of the ascension. But if the enemy followed the connection of the great secret apparatus and reversed the erosion and interference of the pillars, such as Fusang, the Pantheon, and the Solar Almanac, then the foundation of the realm of reality would be completely shaken. We must seal the enemy's range of activity within the outer layer of the great secret apparatus. You understand, Weisher? The voice of the creator of the Middle Island kept coming. Just follow the emergency plan in the manual. First, set the Realm of Eternity's black box to output mode and adjust the distribution. Then, we can freeze the things within the outer layer and seal the inner layer. The most important thing now is to find out where the enemy is. Turn on all the intelligence verification and origin substance identification systems. Turn it on. Weisher's entire body was numb. It's not working. The verification and identification systems set up by the Survival Institute couldn't stop the sniffing of Golden Dawn at all. All the verification from the great secret apparatus itself was ineffective. At the end of the day, these bastards were far too familiar with the structure and inner layer of the great secret apparatus. The verification and inspection procedures of the great secret instrument were essentially to screen out all existences that did not belong to the body and produce a rejection reaction against all intruders. The materials used for verification and identification also came from within the great secret apparatus. But under the erosion of the Hell's Matrix, they were completely ineffective. Now, when the automatic mode was useless, they could only switch to manual mode. Weisher could only hurriedly deal with the various error reporting programs that popped up, then throw everything that could be used into the verification database. He didn't even have time to look at it. But the situation was still slowly deteriorating, bringing about waves of torment, until suddenly an ear-piercing alarm sounded. External intrusion detected. Weisher lowered his head in confusion and looked at the document in his hand that he had just picked up. What the hell? It's working? Even Nakajima, who was watching from the sidelines, was stunned. Weisher, how did you do it? He asked in shock. Which verification framework did you use to find the other side? None of them. Weisher looked at the document in his hand that he had pulled out from the Book of Destiny. His expression twitched. It's probably Eastern Summer Republic Road Traffic Safety Law. Nakajima fell silent. At the same time, Alistair looked at the verification program in front of him and fell into a daze. The permitted vehicle type is a small automatic transmission vehicle. Which type of vehicle can you drive? A low-speed cargo vehicle B, low-speed passenger, vehicle C, two-wheeled motorcycle D, low-speed automatic transmission, vehicle. The countdown of 60 seconds began. What the hell? In his unprecedented confusion, the candidate from Golden Dawn began to think, for the first time in his life, what the hell was an automatic transmission? Chapter 1155. At this moment, inside the Great Arcana, Alistair, who had dissolved into a framework state, began to think. Ever since it was born in the core of the land of dreams, it had experienced the teachings of the Creator and the influence of countless records. For the first time in its life, the world, which had been entrusted with a heavy responsibility, had never been confused before. Weren't cars a common means of transportation in the present world? But automatic? What the F*CK is automatic. He searched his own database, but found that he couldn't find any relevant records at all. Why? Why would there be such a boring verification question in the world? Astronomy, geography, chemistry, physics, even the most obscure crystal extraction and alchemy was involved in the records of the land of dreams. The so-called world was a master key created by the Great Arcana from the very beginning. But the heavens pitted him. Driving? If there was a skill that absolutely could not be used in Golden Dawn, it was probably driving. Wasn't the stairway to heaven good? Now that the countdown was rapidly approaching the end, he began to sweat profusely, as if he was a conservative contestant on a variety show. He didn't know where to start, but there was nothing he could do. He could only ask for outside help. Call for help. He went to ask Bennett, but under the siege of many Tier 5, the awakened in the abyss were also at a loss. Automatic. The monk pondered for a long time and asked curiously, is it Osiris's hidden mode? He went to ask the Heretic King, but the Heretic King was indifferent from the beginning to the end. The Heretic King sneered in the communication. You think I know how to drive? Helpless, he could only turn to the last guy, who looked more reliable. Woodman, is there something wrong with your brain? Idiot! One of the few awakened in Golden Dawn who had driving experience was furious. Automatic is a car that automatically switches gears. I knew that you test tube babies in petri dishes would go wrong sooner or later. You can't even drive a car. What's the use? At this point, Alistair couldn't care less about Woodman's contempt. He asked straightforwardly, then which one should I choose? How would I know? Back then, I got my driver's license through the Astronomy Association's special line. Woodman slowed down for a moment in the chaotic battle, and half of his head was almost burned off by the solar almanac's halo. He impatiently scolded, can't you use your brain? Backward compatibility. Since you already have a driving license, why can't you drive a motorcycle? Alistair was stunned. It seems as if perhaps this is the truth. Just as the countdown was about to end, Alistair no longer hesitated and decisively chose the answer. C. Wrong. The shrill sound of the alarm instantly exploded among the stars. Before Alistair could react, the frame in front of him had already locked down, completely closing in on him. Immediately afterward, the heavy pressure from the great secret apparatus descended, and the secret apparatus of the firewall swept past, instantly cutting off Alistair's spreading contamination and locking him down almost instantly. What the hell? In the outflow area, the world's framework dodged and quickly transformed. The authority he had just obtained disappeared without a trace, which made Alistair furious. Woodman, you mother of asterisk cur. However, before he could react, new verification questions were quickly installed in the interfaces of each framework. Countless questions popped up in front of him between the countless forks. Can you directly apply for a large truck driver's license in your temporary residence for the first time? Is driving a motor vehicle in violation of road traffic safety laws and regulations and causing a traffic accident a violation? Please determine how many violations the red motor vehicle in the picture has committed. Countless messy questions popped up in front of Alistair's eyes, causing his originally calm mood to quickly become impetuous and his anger to rise uncontrollably. Motherf asterisk cur. Motherf asterisk cur. Why sure, you dog, you're not human anymore. Where the hell did all these verification questions come from? But any verification question that could be installed in the great secret apparatus must have the correct answer. Otherwise, the other internal frames would not be able to interact normally, and it must be a record of events that had not been tampered with. And there must be an answer and a widely accepted implementation method in reality. Alistair would never have dreamed that what stopped him was not the remnants and fruits of painstaking effort left behind by the previous creators, but the first subject that was soaked in the blood and tears of countless Doomsday drivers. But even so, these questions were still not difficult for him. He only needed to change his strategy and his own structure, and observe the results when the other frames interacted with each other, and he would be able to record the correct answer. But just as he recorded the 1,400th question, he found that the new verification questions were starting to become more and more strange. After Huaishur found that the records in his Book of Destiny could be recognized by the great secret apparatus, the level of strangeness of the verification began to rise crazily in a straight line. How many Mazai-class cruisers did John's side deploy in the Battle of Gundalum? What the F*CK is Gundam? Where did John come from? Is there such a war in the world? I know about cruisers, but what the F*CK is a Mazai-class cruiser. Which character's VA is not Nakamura Yuichi? What the F*CK, Nakamura Yuichi, don't these characters all look the F*King same? Is there a difference other than the hair color? Is there? Chapter 1156. He was simply overestimating himself. Witnessing Huaishur's provocation, Woodman only sneered and did not say anything. What was there to fear about a guy who could only stand in front of him by relying on the secret ritual? Under the suppression of the almanac, Death Angel Samuel's winged serpent was suddenly activated. He ignored the angry rebuke of the tax official and directly extracted a huge amount of death essence from the blood river. A higher level of essence appeared in the endless calamity ash. Just like salt, countless snow-like powder gathered in his hand and formed a strange spear. From thousands of miles away, it was thrown at Huaishur's face. Thus, a rain of death fell from the sky. Countless bone. Spears accompanied the rain of blood as they fell from the sky. Everywhere they passed, the land was barren. There were countless casualties, but all the deaths became a new source of power. Black, cloud-like, flying locusts crawled out from the dry land. They spread their wings and sprinkled the poison of death. At this moment, taking advantage of the brief pause of the secret ritual, the ruler of the blood river suddenly revealed his incarnation. Countless long snakes flew out of the blood river and bit the hunchback deficient of Paradise Earth. They drilled into the blood river. The next moment, they broke through Mars's obstruction and drilled out of the vortex that appeared out of nowhere. The two rulers worked together and suddenly attacked ruthlessly. The moment they appeared, the blood snakes coiled and formed a wall using their bodies to isolate Mars. Paradise Earth's officiant had already raised his eyes. Boundless greed and appetite surged from the pair of pitch-black eyes. In the end, a holy light rose. Paradise Earth's miracle descended. The giant mouth of the abyss appeared and opened towards Huaishur, revealing the endless darkness that led to the bottom of the abyss. So despicable. Huaishur raised his eyes. He was not afraid. Instead, he saw that Woodman did not take the bait and felt slightly regretful. Fortunately, I am not a gentleman, following his words. Under his feet, on the dark land, a fierce light appeared on the steel face. The armor rumbled, and the engine spouted. The overload drive began. The behemoth that had been waiting for a long time broke free from the shackles of gravity. 6 light wings spread out and spewed out endless flames towards the sky and the stars. Then he flew out towards his enemy. When a majestic silhouette appeared in the dissipating mist and dust, not only Paradise Earth's officiant, but even the blood snake and woodman in the distance could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. His hair stood on end. Osiris, the giant of the underworld. After a moment of horror, it was replaced by mockery and fury after being treated with such contempt. How much longer are you going to play this King game? Scram! Paradise Earth's officiator stretched out his hand expressionlessly and pressed down. The holy light pierced down like a blade. The high temperature of the holy light, comparable to a solar flare, instantly incinerated the illusions that were not even worth mentioning, revealing the gigantic armor hidden within. Anubis. It's Anubis again. It's this again. I've had enough of this senseless trick. Even so, the steel giant that rose into the air did not retreat or evade the burning streams of light, allowing the terrible heat to instantly reduce countless armors to dust. A deep crack suddenly appeared on Anubis' face. Behind the burning eyes, there was only a gloomy world, endless fog, and even the surging Styx. The sound of waves surged out. In the blink of an eye, Anubis silently collapsed, shattered, and fused into the Styx, vanishing without a trace. It was as if Madame Chen's roar could be heard. Amidst the sound of waves, the roar of steel could be heard. Thus, without any warning, the forbidden program was activated. It directly abandoned the normal mode and overload mode, stepping into the extremely dangerous Styx drive mode. If it was not careful, not only Anubis, but even the driver himself would not be able to escape the restraints of the Styx, dissolving in that eternal death. But now, it was as if Anubis had already tried this countless times. It was already familiar with all the changes flashing inside and outside the Styx with great familiarity. In a short moment, dozens of deep jumps interweaved into the waves of the Styx. The mighty Styx flowed above the vault of heaven, penetrating the blazing holy light like an illusion. The destructive light engulfed it, but could not harm it at all. The projection of the Styx extended straight under Anubis' feet, opening up a path in the midst of self-destruction, instantly blocking in front of Huaishur. The mouth of the abyss was penetrated by the Styx. It was torn apart. In the surging waves, in the river that seemed to lead to eternal silence and destruction, only a steel arm suddenly stretched out, quickly reassembling, 5 fingers spread open. No, this was Paradise Earth's officiator's expression changed greatly. He took a step back. Paradise Earth's door appeared, engulfing him, and he quickly disappeared. But between Anubis' 5 fingers, countless electric sparks burst out. The armor fell off. The high-frequency power blade module popped out, tearing apart all the defenses like a hot knife through butter. Ignoring the fact that Paradise Earth's door was rapidly closing, it pierced through. It grabbed Paradise Earth's officiator in its palm, pulled out. Then, the 5 fingers contracted. Pa! Like crushing a soft persimmon, a viscous scarlet residue was squeezed out. Next, flames ignited between the 5 fingers, quickly burning the residue of the officiator. Hoarse screams and terrified wails came from the wind. But no matter how much he struggled, he could not escape the punishment of hell. In the end, he was reduced to ashes. There was no trace left. Just like this, in just 2 short flicks of the fingers, the officiator from Paradise Earth was crushed into meat paste in Anubis' hands. Dead silence. A sudden dead silence. A long-lost chill lingered in everyone's heart, causing their breathing to stop. Was this really Anubis? In all the identification and observation of the probing mirror, the opponent in front of them should be the Anubis from celestial genealogy. But this murderous aura, the trembling from the depths of their souls, and the combat style that was completely different from before. This was clearly, sorry, I haven't used it for so many years. I'm a little rusty. In the dead silence, Only a clear male voice rang out. "I'm not late, am I?" "No, you're not." Why Sure replied with a smile. "I was still thinking about how to introduce you to everyone. But now it seems that there's no need for that, right? But there's someone here who needs you to specifically greet." As he spoke, he raised his hand. In his hand, the heavy steel book trembled slightly, as if it was crying. "Long time no see, my friend. How are you?" 15 minutes ago, on the silent wilderness, there was blood everywhere. The exhausted Anubis trekked among the bones of the giant beasts. In the cockpit, other than the ticking of the instruments, there was only heavy breathing. The battle was too long, and the battle was too tragic. Even Anubis felt that he had reached his limit. Madame Chun raised her head, drank the strong liquor in the pot that could be used as fuel, and wiped the sweat off her forehead. The computing unit embedded in her skull was beginning to overheat. This was really King enough. Before she could catch her breath, she heard the signal for help ring again. There were more battles and battles waiting in the distance. There's really an endless amount of work to do, an endless amount of grinding. She clicked her tongue, scratched her wet hair, and complained helplessly. "Russell, you old bastard, after this trip, you should at least give me a month's leave. I won't do it if it's one day less." Unfortunately, the main character couldn't respond at all. There were only countless supportive comments on the internal forum. This time, shouts were heard from behind Anubis. It was hurried and awkward. In the distance, next to the scrapped motorcycle that was emitting thick smoke, an embarrassed rider stood on tiptoe and shouted at Anubis, "Wait, Shaowen, wait." Madame Chun was stunned for a moment. She hadn't heard this nickname for a long time, which she had been extremely resistant to since decades ago. After a brief moment of shock, she couldn't help but fly into a rage. She suddenly turned around. King. Her words came to an abrupt end. She was stunned on the spot. This motherf cur. Not only the large group of people in the chessboard, even the spectators outside the chessboard couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. After being forgotten for 70 years, that terrifying deterrent force had returned once again. It caused even the soul to feel cold. It was an Anubis that hadn't changed at all, but when it was in Orton's hands, it was so terrifying that it shocked everyone. Originally, the skills that Madame Chun had honed from countless large groups and battles were already shocking enough, and she was considered a great threat. However, when this armor was accepted by Orton, everyone had a clear understanding of what a real nightmare was. In his hand, the dragon summoning flute that had changed into a sword form was also resonating loudly. It was completely illogical. After more than 60% of its components had been destroyed, it once again entered into an overload state after 15 minutes of Nether River Drive, which broke the previous record, more than 400 deep warps and judgment. Holy judgment! People wondered why this armor hadn't been destroyed yet. Why could it still continue to move? Why was it still so terrifying? Everyone was racking their brains to think. How long could it last? How long could it safely operate under such an overload state? Every answer was disdainfully trampled on by Anubis's feet. The only thing he could feel was fear and helplessness and despair. Orton! 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 Among the stars, Beelzebub roared excitedly. "You're all trash. You know that? You're all trash. None of you can fight. None." Amidst the ecstasy that made even his soul cry, the Lord of the Flies shouted excitedly, using all his strength to encourage Orton. He praised the mighty giant in the blood sea and patiently explained every tactical maneuver, every emergency dodge, and every amazing counterattack to Weisher. In the midst of the battle, Anubis suddenly stopped. It looked back at the night sky behind it. It reached out its hand to invite the stars. It waited. Do you want to come, Beelzebub? The young man in the driver's seat laughed loudly and shouted, "You can't understand the essence of driving just by explaining. I have new tricks to show you." The Lord of the Flies trembled. The Book of Steel was already tearing up. In the starry sky, the infusion of the infinite source substance finally ended. Under the unprecedented supply of source substance, Beelzebub's body turned red. Endless data flashed on the steel cover, faintly showing the glow of burning hell. All the preparations were in place. Your battle is calling for you, Beelzebub. It's time for you to appear. Weisher reached out his hand and smiled. Go, my friend. Under the continuation of the starlight that filled the sky between his opened arms, that thick iron book appeared with an excited radiance. Amidst the excited shouts, the blissful calls, and the fanatical roars, Lord of the Flies descended from the sky. After a long, long time of waiting, from hell to the reality, from the astral to now, with burning hot tears. Then he dashed towards his best friend. Like a shooting star, it pierced through the storm and descended from the sky. You're late, Beelzebub. Anubis reached out and caught the dazzling light. As if he was laughing, he asked, How is it? Are you doing well? Orton, you bastard. Beelzebub scolded angrily. Do you know how it feels to wait for 70 years without an internet connection? Do you think I'm doing well? Ha ha ha, it seems like you're doing well. Orton smiled and patted his cover. Oh, it's gotten a lot thicker too. Oh, it looks like spirits can get fat from eating too much. You're amazing, although you're still a bit weaker than me. Can you stop being so smug? Beelzebub snorted coldly. He wanted to scold him, but he could not say anything. He had saved up so much anger and curses for him, but when they really met, he could not help but choke. I miss you so much. I know. Orton nodded and answered matter-of-factly, because I miss you so much. I'm sorry for leaving you alone for so long and making you work so hard for so many years. But to be able to see you now, to see you make new friends, it's really great. The deceased descender smiled and extended his hand, inviting him again. Beelzebub, can you fight with me again? Of course. Lord of the Flies laughed and replied, Other than me, who else can stand being your adjutant? But you, with your current body, can you stand my 6-dimensional jump? Of course, it's more than enough. Orton smiled and opened the inner structure of Anubis, carefully filling it in. Then let's do it again. That. Beelzebub was excited. Yes, that. Orton nodded. It's a resurrection battle. After all, something cool. No problem. Lord of the Flies' voice was sonorous. It's just background music. Leave it to me. Listen, I made this for you personally. It's an original soundtrack. He responded to his best friend's request and call. At that moment, in the mountains of corpses and seas of blood on the ground, brilliant flames appeared again, spurting out from every crack in Anubis. The stigmata that had been dormant for many years was awakened by Beelzebub's will. It spread throughout this body that shared the same origin and path, instantly covering the entire armor. It controlled everything again. It rose from the ground and descended from the sky. The river Styx surged. The burning wings of light extended endlessly towards the stars and hell, as if it wanted to wrap everything under the control of the Supreme One again. Wherever it passed, the melody from the abyss echoed in everyone's ears. It attacked without caring about anything and did not hide its location at all. It was as if it wanted to dissolve itself in the fire. Beelzebub sang excitedly. Give praise to the returning hero. A huge light will rose from the giant's back. The crack that led to the deepest part of the underworld opened again. Endless disasters attached to Anubis' body like iron, adding a crown of destruction to it. Layers of light revolved and draped over his body like a holy white robe. Above the overloaded engine, the blessings from the gods appeared again. What was even louder was the surging melody that burst out from the friction of countless iron pieces, echoing between heaven and earth, thus announcing the arrival of the judge to the world, thus announcing the arrival of destruction to all of you, turning heaven and earth into his stage, making everything listen to his words. Under the majestic light, Wheel, the reborn god, opened his arms, embracing the world that was filled with the flames of war and smoke. This was the judgment bestowed by the abyss, the destruction meticulously created by hell. This was Osiris, the giant of the underworld. Stepping on the boiling rain of blood beneath his feet, Osiris moved forward, dragging the massive sword of Horus with him as he charged into the endless shadows of hell once again. At this moment, looking down from above the starry sky, the darkness on the earth was also opened up in front of the blazing light. Countless hells were precipitated and burned in the flames. Under the hell giant's stomps, the surging river of death swallowed everything. They swept through the area. Wherever it passed, everything was cleanly destroyed. Under the suppression of Quafu and the 24 solar terms, Moonfrost's expression suddenly changed. She retreated in the fierce wind, but the scorching red blade had already left a scar and wound on her face in an instant. The blessings and secret ritual that were bestowed by the eternal storm and the cold wave were also broken by the blade. The ruler's expression was gloomy. Without caring about anything else, the storm totem above his head suddenly descended. Then countless blood-stained surfaces quickly cracked, revealing the solid ice that was sealed within. Under the thick layer of ice, a dazzling ray of lightning solidified within, exuding endless ferocity. That was the breath bestowed by the Grand Lord. The sea of lightning that gathered the remains of countless hells was the throne beneath the Grand Lord's feet. And this was the death embers that were exhaled by the Grand Lord's true body. The wind of origin that came from the deepest part of the sea of lightning, refined and sublimated from the destruction that had been brewing for countless eras. Now, the moment the ice layer broke, a bone-piercing chill flowed out from it, enveloping the world within a radius of millions of miles, freezing everything in a bleak white. Quafu flew out in a sorry state. Layers of ice crystals appeared on his originally strong and tough body. His flesh was dark and necrotic, and it was difficult to heal. But what was even more terrifying was the strand of amorphous thunder that flowed out from it. As the thunder faded, a hurricane suddenly appeared. The moment the vessel was destroyed, the breath of the Grand Lord descended upon this broken world. The stars swayed and froze, and on the ground, the realm of discovery was greeted with a violent tremor. The suppression of the 24 solar terms was easily torn apart by the breath of the King of Hell. The strongest power in the world descended upon this place, spreading and destroying indiscriminately. Everything was shattered like dust, and even the dust was reduced to nothingness in the dark storm. In a flash, countless buildings disappeared without a trace in the spreading torrent. Even Osiris, who was moving forward, fell into a standstill. The thick layer of ice that covered his armor grew rapidly, and then instantly cracked and peeled off. Amidst the spreading flames, a crack was actually opened up in the boundless storm. The cold words rose from Lamia's throat, extracting the life of the giant snake, and engraving an inviolable truth in this narrow world. The will of the withered king descended. The blood river flowed freely, and countless skeletons crawled out from the river. Their eyes lit up, and withered origin substance surged, offering praise to death. Under the suppression of the world giant, the giant statue formed by countless skeletons roared at the sky, spewing out endless scarlet light. and the depth of the entire fragment began to increase at a terrifying speed. The stars in the sky swayed, and countless frames creaked under the pressure. Even cracks appeared in the night sky. Under the impact of the decree of the withered king, the 6 paths of reincarnation were the first to collapse, and the celestials of the 3 paths of goodness were rapidly undergoing changes and withering under the pull of the gravity of hell. The mocking laughter of the courtiers rang out. The curse and the precipitation of hell that had seeped into the fragment at some point in time spewed out, and all the large groups gradually solidified amidst 5 different types of decay. Ever since the 3 branches of creation, destruction, and maintenance split, the shattered origin codex had no hope of mending. From then on, the solidified shadow constantly chased after the Indian ascendants. Now, they were just one step behind, and the tragic situation of the past reappeared. And what was even more horrifying was that after the 6 paths of reincarnation were lost, the night sky was still tilting. When the fulcrum of the stars was destroyed, the countless specks of starlight began to scatter. In the shattered reincarnation, the figure of stone incantation appeared for a moment. The celestial who had already died suddenly opened his eyes, and tears of blood flowed from his eyes. The withered body was like a stone stuck between the collapsing 6 paths of reincarnation, and turned into the last pillar propping up the collapsed foundation and stabilizing the tilted stars once again. And as a price, the remaining 3 paths of good and 3 paths of evil were no more. Countless Indian ascendants turned into dust under the impact of the turbulence, and their souls, infected by the solidification, returned to the Continuation Academy in a sorry state. The double impact of the Sea of Thunder and the destruction of the country pushed the great secret apparatus into a precarious situation in the blink of an eye. Even though Immortal Stone incantation gave up the last bit of hope of rebirth and propped up the fulcrum once again, he could no longer withstand any impact. For a moment, the pressure on the other pillars began to increase explosively. The endless heat emitted by the solar almanac was gradually shrinking to maintain its stability, and after the breath of origin tore apart the 24 solar terms, cracks appeared on the sun wheel above the Fusang tree crown. The Lotus Emperor sat at the top of Fusang expressionlessly. He coldly looked down at the endless black tide. Let's see if you little rascals can shake the towering pillars formed after countless storms. Just behind Fusang, under the endless starry sky, the shadow of the abyss suddenly appeared. Bennett clasped his hands together. Absa's darkness spewed out from the ground. After seizing the opportunity, it instantly locked Mars and the monsters of paradise in the hell that it had created. Countless people's expressions changed abruptly. At this moment, in the short period of time when the ascension was about to be completed, under the siege of countless hells, a temporary defensive vacuum appeared in the hinterland of the present realm. The winged serpent wheel and the angel of death had already passed through the layers of blockades and charged straight in. Woodman's face was already close. The spear of original sin, which looked like it was made of salt crystals, whistled through the air. In an instant, it pierced Huaishir's body. The dust had settled. A child's dare ends here. Huaishir, Woodman said coldly, "It's time to go home." "Is that so?" On the throne, Huaishir looked up slightly. Immediately after, an unsettling expression of joy appeared on that face. A pair of hands gently and persistently pressed on Woodman's hands that were holding the spear. "Clench." "No hurry." Just like that, he smiled at the visitor who had come from afar. Huaishir said, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." The condensation of all meanings in the world, the final destination of all records, the reproduction of all originals and realities, it was the Genesis Codex passed down by celestial genealogy, a relic of authority that belonged to the orthodox lineage, the Book of Destiny. At that moment, the reality, hell, and even the governing game outside the chessboard were all dead silent. Mather's expression suddenly changed. Even the withered king, who was watching from the depths of the palace, raised his eyes slightly and exchanged glances with the Grand Monarch. In the decision-making room, many people's hands trembled, and the hot coffee fell onto their pants. They didn't even hold the cup properly. Ignoring the wine in their necks, they turned around abruptly. His eyes widened. He looked at the old man, who was smoking calmly. Unbelievable. It was impossible to see the schemes and determination hidden in that mysterious smile, but at that moment, everyone couldn't help but have the urge to suck in a breath of cold air. This old bastard. For this gamble, he actually took out the celestial genealogy's trump card. Not only did he give Huaishur the authority, but he even gave the original Book of Destiny to him. Long before the bet began, he had quietly placed all his bets on the scale. The moment the dice cup was opened, the thunder that hadn't dissipated in the past could be heard. It was so thrilling. Now, before the collapse spread, a brand new pillar appeared between heaven and earth. After Huaishur's shattered body, the Book of Solemnity's silhouette gradually rose, causing the stars in the sky to burst forth with light, as if welcoming the true axis. Just like that, it rose into the sky. Here, I offer everything I have to all things. Huaishur spread out his arms, embracing the stars in front of him, smiling as he welcomed death. With my soul as a sacrifice, I bestow upon the stars in the sky and all things in the world. This was the king of Dambua's final sacrifice. Just like that, Huaishur's soul and origin substance transformed into countless streaks of light, flying towards the lonely stars in the night sky. With my own body, I bestow a soul upon this enormous secret instrument, mend all cracks, repair the turbulent mortal world, and return everything to peace. The countless frames and laws that had been scattered all over the place swiftly returned to the control of the starry sky. As the countless pages of the Book of Destiny flipped rapidly, Huaishur's will float out and spread out, instantly enveloping the entire world, isolating hell, suppressing solidification, dispelling the disasters in the wind, cutting off the flow of the blood river and wild winds, returning everything to the right track. Heaven and earth became clear, looking brand new. Those distant sounds rose and fell, overlapping in one place, transforming into waves that spread out, once again enveloping the entire world. All things sang in joy. The sound of cracking could be heard. Within the frozen framework, the winged serpent will once again begin to operate with great difficulty. Woodman roared. His eyes were scarlet red. Once again, after being toyed with by the Book of Destiny for who knows how many times, the solidified being had already sunk into madness, recklessly activating the divine mark that had transformed into a serpent will behind him. Specks of blood appeared on the spear in his hand. Vast amounts of disasters and pain surged out from the strange blade. Under the shattered salt crystals, the outline and appearance of steel appeared, reenacting the death of God, killing everything in the mortal world. Mark of the miracle, Longinus. Go F*** King die for me. Woodman roared, raising his spear, aiming at the Book of Destiny that had yet to disappear among the stars in the sky, suddenly stabbing. He no longer cared about Mather's shouts and shouts. He wanted to completely smash everything in front of him into smithereens. But before that, an even more dazzling flame burst forth from the stars. As Huaishur's figure was completely incinerated, a brand new outline converged from the stars. In a short flick of a finger, it was reforged under the irrigation of the great secret ritual. Amidst the countless brilliant starlight, a pair of cold eyes looked down. Iron light grew from his hand, and in the blink of an eye, it descended from the sky again. It crossed the distance between the earth and the sky, tearing apart the space formed by the violent wind. The mighty sound of the seven seas' rushing waves reappeared. The blade that gathered infinite mass ignited with pure light and fell like a meteor. It sped past the tip of the spear and pierced into Woodman's head. Pa! There was a soft sound. The blade tore through the insignificant skull and came out from the back of his head. It pulled him down and fell to the ground. Amidst the winged serpent's sorrowful cry, he crashed to the ground. Soon after, the figure in the sky slowly descended. Trample! The ground cracked. Woodman's body was completely trampled into the crack. His face was pressed deep into the soil by the pressure of his leather boots. Only the eyes that struggled to raise in the roar saw that face from the bottom up again. It was so familiar. Huaishur bent down and looked at his sorry appearance. He smiled. "Long time no see." He asked, "Are you all right?" He did not wait for a response. Whether he was all right or not, he would definitely not be all right next. Because of the glow of pain, Huaishur's hand appeared. Then, like a bullet, wrath was loaded. The wolf head hammer suddenly opened its eyes, and the tail spewed out crimson flames. Like a falling meteorite, it smashed toward the head under its feet. In the roar, Woodman flew backward, but before he landed, Huaishur's figure had already appeared in the air. The spear of compassion in his hand reappeared, overlapping with wrath. The ferocious halberd slashed down and slashed across his throat. A head flew into the air, and then it was violently smashed by the hammer. Then, the chain blade flew out and wedged into the chest of the wreckage. Then, the wreckage that flew out flew backward under the pull of the chain. In the same place, Huaishur raised his hands calmly and had already put on an impeccable batting posture. In his hand, the mighty tide reverberated again. A fawn of the seven seas. Wave. Boom. Just like that, the wreckage was completely smashed into a pile of meat paste. In this short moment, the eyeballs of countless observers were about to say goodbye to the eye sockets that had accompanied them for many years, and their eyeballs popped out in surprise. The moment Huaishur completed his sacrifice, another Huaishur reappeared at an incredible speed. Then, he used Woodman to put on a show of killing. Under the attack of various weapons, Woodman did not even have time to fight back before he turned into a pile of slag. He directly fought a Tier 5, and a Tier 5 from the Utopia era. Where did such a fierce beast come from? Before this, the observers who had just gotten used to Huaishur's various tricks finally remembered how ridiculous this bastard was when he was at his peak. Not only did he advance in front of the Rotten Dragon, but he also blew up the Najilfa fleet. In the end, he even placed the wreckage under the iron monument of the Utopia, leaving an inexorable shadow in the hearts of countless hell hordes. This was not the Calamity Sword at all, but the most ridiculous output card of the current Celestial genealogy, the Returner, which had just been released not long ago. He took down the representative role of the golden card at Tier 4 and single-handedly created the mainstay of the Utopia. Returner, Huaishur. The moment he sacrificed himself and integrated the Book of Destiny into the Great Arcana, Huaishur decisively abandoned the power to control the world and handed it over to the scholars of the Continuation Academy gathered in the Ivory Tower. In any case, the Book of Destiny had his simulated personality, and the administrator account was still in his hands. It did not matter how he used it at critical moments. But now, the most important thing was no longer the Great Arcana. It was the F*King Golden Dawn. Now, the two of us can have a good chat. Huaishur carried off Fong and coldly glanced at Woodman, who was quickly regenerating under the winged serpent wheel, and sneered. "Don't you like to chat? Why don't we talk about how you reached Tier 5 with such a noob like you?" Boom. A loud sound burst forth again. Woodman's expression changed abruptly, and he retreated again in disbelief. Longinus, in his hand, shook violently, almost flying out of his hand. He was actually almost unable to hold his weapon under the attack of Huaishur's Cloud Lord. But before he had any time to react, Huaishur's face reappeared in front of him. He sneered. The sword that cut down the 7 seas. Infinite power came from the vibrating sword, causing the tip of the spear to buzz. It was even transmitted to his bones and flesh, causing the new gray wing on his back to suddenly burst and fall apart. If that strange vibration burst out in his body, it would be enough to blow him into minced meat in an instant. But at that moment, what entered his ears was a vast and distant chime, a tide of endless melody. It was as if what he was facing was not a scholar's poem. But at that moment, Woodman suddenly raised his head and looked at the countless brilliant stars above his head. That was where the great movement came from. Oh, you actually heard it. Huaishur sneered and raised the blade in his hand again. This is the performance of the entire world. At that moment, a mighty sound that echoed the stars burst out from his body. The power of the entire realm was poured into this narrow body, and it exploded with a bang. This was the ability to turn the entire world into a concert hall. Mastery, symphony. Chapter 1160. He had never experienced such an amazing feeling before. It was as if he had become one with the world. The rotation of the sun, moon, and stars was like a rushing bloodline. The breath in his heart was like a storm, and the whispers from the clouds were like thunder. When his heart beat, the distant and mighty sound of waves could be heard. The resonance from the great secret instrument continuously lowered this power, delicately maintaining it at an upper limit that Huaishur had never imagined, increasing its destructive power infinitely. Now, the performance of heaven and earth was entrusted to his own strings. The sound of the world was gathered between his 5 fingers. Suddenly, it exploded. Huaishur's figure disappeared without any warning. Only the dazzling metal light cut through the void, leaving behind a burning trail like a meteor. It went straight forward. It went straight in front of the winged serpent wheel. It exploded. Woodman's figure flickered and appeared in midair. His expression was gloomy, and Longinus in his hand was buzzing. When faced with this attack, he realized that he definitely could not block it head-on. Otherwise, even his soul might be injured. How does it feel to be in a different era, Mr. Woodman? Huaishur raised his head from the depression in the ground and asked curiously, "Do you feel very disappointed?" In his hand, the blade had been ravaged by that terrifying power and had already fallen apart. The cracks spread up his arm and climbed up his neck and face. But very quickly, under Huaishur's casual movements, the surging metal light in the countless cracks quickly healed, retracted, and disappeared. The injured parts were instantly transformed into origin substance and then reconstructed, causing the muscles and bones that had been torn apart by the recoil to completely heal, looking brand new. After reaching the 4th level, this feeling of being reborn at the drop of a hat was really good. He completely threw the huge consumption to the back of his mind. Under the constant attention of the great secret instrument's endless origin substance, great Siming and Yun Zhongjuan's divinity constantly changed, causing Woodman to feel waves of disgust. It came from the restraint of the celestial genealogy. F***CK, the Heavens Inquisition Road. God knows which bastard had slapped his head and saw that there was still a lot of empty space to use after completing the design of the Imperial Court and the ruins of End. Guess what? I think it's too boring to just design a support. In the current version, they can use it to kill their own people surprise. Their high resistance to negative origin substances and curses allowed these bastards to be immune to most of the debuffs in celestial genealogy. At the same time, they were able to turn the enemy's curses into food and further convert them into their own strength. Coupled with all kinds of weapons, relics, and even miraculous engravings, almost every ascendant of the Heavens Inquisition Road had endless tricks up their sleeves. Once the harsh environmental requirements were met and the supply of origin substances was taken care of, these guys would suddenly transform from support to DPS so powerful that it made one's scalp go numb. No way, I can't be so passive anymore. The injured winged serpent hissed, and the giant will spun. In the sky, the huge gray wings spread out again and swallowed the sharp blade thrown by Huaisher. Then Woodman held Longinus upside down and aimed it at the ground. His 5 fingers loosened. Thus, the pitch-black spear in his hand followed the call of gravity and fell into the embrace of the earth. In that instant, Huaisher's throat tightened. He felt a chill run down his spine, and the alarm of death exploded. Without thinking, he sprinted away and instantly retreated. But in the sky above his head, even under the suppression of the great secret instrument, the god-slaying spear was still rapidly falling towards him, burning with flames. It quickly split apart. It expanded several times, and in the blink of an eye, the sky was already covered with burning edges. As Huaisher retreated, she changed her angle without any warning. Under the acceleration of gravity, she became faster and faster. In fact, she even broke through the limits of what the naked eye could see. She pulled out a pitch-black line, extending and elongating. Now, countless black edges had locked onto Huaisher and sealed him within. Even the afterimages created by Shadow Burial's shuttling were all torn apart. Sparks constantly burst out in the air, and the sounds of swords and spears colliding rang out incessantly. Huaisher's space to dodge was rapidly shrinking. But even so, Woodman still felt that it was not enough. He raised his other hand and aimed it at the night sky. In the blink of an eye, dozens of dazzling flames appeared out of thin air in the dark night. Meteorites inscribed with countless runes fell from the sky. The earth shook violently, and in the midst of the airwaves, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot up into the sky. It came from Huaisher's fingertips. The heavenly drum was stirred. In just a few seconds, the 9th-degree purified lightning played a destructive lingering sound in the sky, echoing with the lightning that struck down from another part of the night sky. Countless god-slaying spears that were pouncing towards the earth strangely froze in place at that moment. Then, the lightning that was charging towards Woodman suddenly reversed and turned back. He actually made a prompt decision to transform his own source substance into lightning again. Huaisher pounced towards Woodman, along with the countless Longinus behind him. Little bastard, you mother asterisk cur, Woodman cursed. The veins in his eyes were like fire. As expected of the Golden Dawn. Really amazing. Amazing! Huaisher could not help but clap his hands in admiration, not hiding his mocking laughter at all. Behind him, the door to the ultimate opened again, revealing the god-slaying spear that was constantly circling in the darkness, unable to find its target. It was aimed at Woodman, who was right in front of it. "I'll give it back to you." Without waiting for Woodman to react, Longinus, who was still attached to threads of flesh and blood erosion, had already shot out towards its master. When the calamity gathered by the massive amount of death was neutralized by the vitality of the eternal beast's flesh and blood, the pitch-black spear seemed to have rusted, covered in bronze-green spots and mildew. Even the curse and vicious poison that made Woodman's expression change. The winged serpent will spun wildly. The giant snake opened its mouth and bit down on the spear thrown by Huaisher. Countless scales quickly shattered and peeled off from its body. The snake's head welcomed the rapid decay, the white bones were exposed, and venom was constantly seeping out, sizzling. But before he could react again, Huaisher's pupils once again appeared in front of him. The sword of 7 seas slashed down, tearing through the gray fog and slashing on the defensive framework that appeared in front of him. Cracks started to appear on the boundary of truth, everlasting prosperity under the impact of this pure force. Outside the cracks, there were sounds of shock and astonishment. It can't be, it can't be. How could the great woodman, a level 5 and creator double ascender, be so weak? Huaisher asked curiously, pausing between each word. Big brother, why were you beaten by a level 4 to the point where you can't even raise your head? Bang! The angel of death's furious roar turned into a light of darkness, spurting out from Woodman's mouth, causing Huaisher to have no choice but to retreat a distance and temporarily avoid the sharp edge. But his mocking smile became more and more indulgent. Angry? Just kidding. You don't have to go so far, right? Or are you saying that you mess with other people's mentality every day, and in the end, you're the kind that's especially easy to break through? Huaisher wiped the ashes on his sword indifferently and asked casually, "Oh, right, how did Russell kill you back then? It doesn't look very thorough, but there's still so much dust left." Or, he paused, his smile becoming more and more mocking. "Don't tell me you think that you still have a chance to obtain the Book of Destiny after becoming like this? That's great, that's really great. Is this what they mean by men are all youths until death? It's so cute and naive that I'm about to cry. Woo-woo, woodman, my woodman." That gentle and warm tone, as well as that malicious and cruel smile, was simply better than all the slashes and wounds of swords. Not only was the scarlet-eyed woodman furious, but even the many chess players and all the spectators watching through the mirrors couldn't help but want to take 2 breaths of cold 1982 oxygen. Damn it, was this really the Prince of Paradise who was known for his gentleness and kindness? Was this the heavenly state cowherd who was known for his bright and beautiful sunshine? Don't joke around. Look at this scene. It was enough to be ranked in the top 10 wicked scenes of the century. And it was so wicked that even the king of fun from the fallen country couldn't help but applaud. How was this the white jade pillar holding up the sea and purple gold beam of the astronomy meeting? How was this still human? It could only be said that he was indeed worthy of being the student and successor taught by that old bastard, Russell. He was simply better than his predecessor. For a moment, no matter how callous the audience was, they couldn't help but feel compassion and pity for Woodman. What did Woodman do wrong to deserve such treatment? Oh, the traitor of the Golden Dawn. That's fine. Damn it, increase the power. Why, sure. In the dead silence, the killing intent that could freeze everything spread. Woodman's eyes burned and were covered in blood. The winged serpent hissed, breeding a dark tide of disaster. But before he could speak again, behind Huaisher, in the distant night sky, Yi Zichen looked at Huaisher. The roar of steel spread, together with the main cannon that was more than 160 meters long, weighed 470 tons, and was personally forged by the Grand Master, Mikhail, to strike across depth the wailing harpoon. The green waves spread out like a tide. The whale hissed. The main cannon of the Kingdom of Heaven's battleship, Nautilus, fired. Don't talk. Huaisher smiled, raised a finger to her lips, and gently reminded Woodman, "Don't worry. Feel it with your heart." Chapter 1161. If one thought about it carefully, there seemed to be nothing more wonderful than the so-called heart in this world. It was as if anything would become fashionable when it was associated with the heart. The heart could create happiness. The heart could solve problems. And the heart could bring about fetters. The heart could also feel love, friendship, dreams, trust, hope, and all the other insignificant things. And this was a fury that would burn all of you and the entire hell into ashes. Now, the fury was entrusted to the steel. The iron whale hissed. Under the illumination of the stars, the clear mortal world was instantly covered by a scarlet that stung all eyes. They surged out from the darkness, and attached themselves to the steel, burning the silent, wailing harpoon in its chest into a scarlet red. The steel unfurled its formless wings, absorbing the power transmitted from all of the outposts without the slightest hesitation. It brutally marched through the mortal world, carrying with it the scorching heat of destruction and the hatred left behind by countless souls. The distant distance was left behind in the blink of an eye. Now, destruction descended from the sky along with the fury of the stars, causing all things to tremble and the earth to shake. Wherever the cold starlight shone, even the hurricane came to an abrupt stop. Before that, the infinite pressure had already suppressed the serpent-wing wheel of the angel of death, not allowing it to struggle at all. It also did not allow it to dodge or escape. Karma was at its head. Look, Mr. Woodman. Huaisher looked at the fiery red falling from the sky. Among the countless swaying shadows, his smile was no longer warm, only cold and cruel. The time for judgment has come. Now, judgment had arrived. The serpent-wing wheel hissed, and the giant wheel spun. Countless gray wings spread out, overlapping with each other and eroding reality. It was as if a skyscraper had risen from the ground. The boundary within the wings began to transform rapidly towards hell, and endless barriers appeared out of nowhere. The unique and terrifying sealing ability of the eternal prosperity of truth's framework manifested itself. Even the suppression of the great secret ritual was blocked outside. All of the power was accurately and rapidly channeled to the critical point. Under the wings of the angel of death, countless bubbles of hell appeared, forming a small but concrete structure of the abyss. The infinite depth rapidly increased in front of the wailing harpoon. However, none of this would work. Under the bombardment of the cannons, the innumerable gray fog was dispersed. The drifting wings were burned to ashes in the raging fire. The endless depths were broken through and crossed layer by layer under the falling ferocious stars. Woodman's delaying and diverting won't work. A huge halo revived from the top of its head, shrouding the grayish-black crown like a snake, indiscriminately sprinkling jealousy and hatred. Countless eyes stared at Huaisher. The young man shrouded in the boundless radiance. Was it hatred or envy that appeared in those chaotic eyes? But in the end, it all turned into malice and mockery, as if they were looking at a fool who was trying to stop a chariot. The seven heads opened, and countless chaotic words overlapped in one place. Some were murmuring, some were questioning, some were mocking, and some were roaring. In the end, it became a roar that ravaged everyone's eardrums. In the huge mouth, a mournful light spewed out. Like a sharp blade of destruction, it swung wildly, piercing and slashing toward Huaisher. A power that was enough to envelop the entire city in destruction and evaporate everything into dust descended, and the 10,000-foot palace rose from the ground under Huaisher's feet. There are 9 layers of redemption. Who can measure them? Looking at the towering heavenly palace, who created it? Miracle imprint, heaven's inquisition, unfold. The projection of the heavenly palace descended, and the cruel scene of the twilight village reappeared. Steel walls descended from the void, overlapping each other. Under the illumination of the setting sun, the glorious era of the steel hell reappeared. And in the night sky behind the heavily shattered iron walls, the Nautilus cruised mightily. Huaisher's unique heavenly palace, the heavenly battleship built by the Utopia in the past, descended here. However, this time, it was no longer an empty shell of the past. Inside the bridge, the weapons cabin, the deck, and the engine room, every part and every corner lit up with the glow of miracles under the control of the returnees. The spirits that had passed away had returned, and they had returned to their posts once more. They were moving towards their mission, not only here, but also in every sentry post throughout the reality realm, in all the positions in the ivory tower. The souls who returned from the dead woke up the silent devices with ease. They connected with each other, causing the operation of the great secret instrument to become more and more resounding and intense. There were more sublimators who once again threw themselves into the battlefield. The souls of the great secret instrument were not created by Huai-Shur alone. Instead, they supported it again. That glorious era seemed to have returned once again. The beautiful past reappeared on this chessboard, once again supporting the pillars of the world and laying the foundation for all ages. Even if it was only for this fleeting moment, Nautilus is at your service, Your Excellency Huai-Shur. At this moment, on the silent bridge, the captain of the Leucoplakia ship bowed his head and offered his loyalty to the figure on the ground. Please give the order. Isn't our enemy here? Everyone. Huai-Shur raised his hand and pointed forward. There is only one order. Kill them all. There was no need to leave behind any wreckage or fragments, not even ashes or dust. Burn the betrayers to ashes. Now, please show me the wrath of Nautilus. Thus, inside the warship, in front of countless instruments, the faces illuminated by the dim light showed a cold smile in unison. Notify the entire ship, the captain's hoarse voice rang in everyone's ears. In the name of the Republic, destroy all rebels. He said, fire all missiles. In that instant, the iron whale in the midst of the stars roared again. The armor covering its entire body rose, split open, and rapidly expanded. The complex structure compressed within the internal space unfolded layer by layer, revealing countless dark voids, as well as war weapons that had been dormant for a long time. Countless pitch-black cannons extended from under Nautilus's body. A torrent of source substance gushed out and spread, enveloping the pitch-black warship in a dazzling rainbow light that resembled a sun's wheel. It was so solemn. Entire region locked down. Central axis anchored. Over-limit supercharging drive. All departments operating normally. All personnel ready. Annihilation mode activated. Under Huai-Shur's will, the song of the whale reverberated through the metal. Hundreds of thousands of fiery lights rose into the night sky, illuminating it as bright as day. All living things trembled in the face of this torrent of destructive firepower. Everything was completely drowned out. Countless rays of intense light rose from the ground like the sun, and then dissipated, leaving streaks of mournful scars on the retina. The war began at this moment, and the war ended at this moment, and the merciless revenge and devastation had just begun. Chapter 1162. Everything was swallowed up by the dazzling radiance. There was no trace of darkness. Only the flames surged and spread like a torrent, rapidly expanding in all directions. Countless sharp sounds came from outside, like glass shattering. The cage formed by the lightning began to change shape, bending and cracking. Then tongues of fire spewed out from the cracks, burning the ground red and tearing a huge hole in the dark clouds in the sky. Even more light shot between heaven and earth, passing through the intense battlefield and wiping out any large group that tried to approach. Tens of thousands of miles away, Osiris waved his hand to disperse the remnant shockwaves. Amidst the encirclement and slaughter of the rulers, Osiris, who had been dyed scarlet, looked back. He was momentarily lost in thought. But soon, enveloped by the breath of origin, he was once again drawn into the eternal storm. In the rolling darkness, a cruel hell of frost and moon rose from the ground. In the blink of an eye, the world within the lightning prison seemed to have been destroyed 10,000 times. No more matter could remain. Everything evaporated under the excessive destruction. Febrile winds that could melt steel stirred back and forth in the air, but no more dust gathered. Only in the very center of the cage was that huge, withered body that was like a stone that remained intact. Countless cracks crisscrossed, and wisps of gray fog rose from within, spreading out as viscous as blood. Now, the 7 incomplete heads raised, once more, coldly looking at the sky. The 10,000 times of destruction had not killed it. Instead, it had made it even more berserk and savage. From the land of raging fire and melting earth, it suddenly spread out its broken wings, causing endless flames to spread out as it flew towards its opponent in the sky. In the dispersing soul, endless poison streams spread. The original sin of man gathered in this body that had been deformed by the essence of the abyss. It burned like flames, causing the 7 heads to scream. The sharp sound pierced through the cage and spread in all directions. Wherever it passed, countless people's consciousness became dizzy, their souls instantly collapsing, or they were immersed in sudden illusions and desires, unable to extricate themselves. Gradually, solidifying, chaos was spreading along with hell. As long as it existed, it would endlessly spread this solidification and corruption. This was the essence of the poison stream. It was as if a terrifying, corrosive force had descended from the abyss. With the help of the distortion brought about by the sinking of countless souls, the skeleton-like giant dragon rapidly recovered and opened its mouth towards the Nautilus in the sun. Darkness eruption. At this moment, darkness radiated out like radiance and converged. Countless essences of death surged within, transforming into a withering breath. Wherever it passed, the depth value skyrocketed, and everything was torn to pieces under the violent changes. The lightning prison that was in imminent danger was pierced through by the light of original sin. Collapse. After breaking through the defense of the sun wheel, a tragic gap was left in the overheated red armor of the Nautilus. The sound of explosions rang out incessantly. The overheated engine unit whined in the turbulence and impact. But now, in the sky, the Nautilus did not retreat, but advanced. The jet port at the tail once again glowed with a dazzling light. Everyone! A hoarse roar from the bridge rang throughout the entire warship. Everyone stay in position. Level 4 impact, stand by. Engine number 2, number 4, and number 6 overload. The captain stared at the rapidly magnifying face on the screen amidst the countless snowflakes and noise. His expression was ferocious. His sharp canine teeth bared like a wild beast. Crash into it. There was no hesitation. Only the sizzling sound of steel-burning hands could be heard. In the furnace-like engine room, the control valves were tightened again, using human strength to change the heart of the furious beast, changing the engine unit, opening the pressure relief valve, adjusting the matrix structure, and charging towards the enemy without holding back. At the front of the battleship, the sharp horn was like a burning red blade, and it was already aimed at the charging Semel. The sound of steel screeching suppressed the roar of the beast. You want to crash? Fine, then crash. Now, the heavy steel slashed down like an axe towards the rising beast of original sin. Only the ear-piercing sound continued to spread, and sparks flew between the stars. Countless pieces of iron and scales fell from the sky. Viscous black blood and burning fuel gathered in one place, sprinkling on the earth like a rainstorm. Airwaves spread. The entire Nautilus let out a distorted sound in an instant. Everyone could hear the sound of the keel bending. However, the gigantic beast was once again reduced to dust by this unreserved attack. The wings with broken bones swayed weakly in the wind and drooped down. A huge crack had appeared in front of the neck and chest. Under the broken bones, no internal organs could be seen pulsating. Only endless darkness was operating. The moment it was revealed, reality within 100 miles began to distort. Rotten flesh grew out of the shattered rocks, and pairs of empty eyes appeared on the withered plants. Even on the front deck of the Nautilus, the places covered by the blood of darkness, there were traces of distortion. It was no longer a structure of life. Instead, it was like holding an entire abyss. A broken wing was not enough to make it back down. The giant dragon turned around and tore off the wing without hesitation, devouring it greedily with its 7 mouths. From the crack on its back, sharp bones pierced out, and blood and fascia spread out to cover it. A new wing of flesh was born. It flapped its wings again. It pounced towards its opponent, but in the wind, a contemptuous sneer sounded. It was an opponent from the night sky. Yun Zhongjuan raised a finger coldly. The mighty sound of a bell burst out from the Nautilus out of thin air. An invisible force quickly repaired all the wounds. In the Nemo engine, the sound of tides burst out. The black clouds above the sky opened like a curtain, covering the stars in all directions. Endless blazing light slashed down from the clouds. Torrential rain poured down, but what fell was not rain, but metal that dissolved into liquid. It was as if millions of tons of mercury were sprinkled from the clouds, smearing the entire world with a cold silver white. Lightning struck down, killing all the distorted matter and collecting it into the eternal darkness of the ultimate. Amidst the storm, sharp blades appeared from the clouds. Thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, endless origin substance armed with the curse and malice imposed by the divine mark, heaven's inquisition fell towards the mortal world, flew down, and stabbed out. The entire world was shrouded in the high-pitched sound of steel rubbing against each other. It was like thunder. Heavens fall. Heavens fall. Heavens fall. Heavens fall. Heavens fall. Endless will of the heavens brewed in the dark cloud furnace and exploded. All the swaying souls were shocked by this clanging sound. They looked up in disbelief at the magnificent miracle in the distance. No, such a ferocious miracle. It was not an exaggeration to call it a disaster, right? It was hard to imagine such a terrifying scale. It had long surpassed the destruction of the endless sea, under the piercing of the endless sharp blades. Only the roar of the beast of original sins spread. The sharp blades tore his body apart and wedged deep into his bones, releasing the anger, pain, resentment, compassion, and grief within. It made flowing venom angry, wail, and reappear with greed. In fact, he even ignored the sharp blades that were violently hurting him and opened his mouth, swallowing the steel in large mouthfuls. Black blood spurted out from the cracks, melting the material and gathering it into a lake. It pulled the steel into the abyss that was born in his body. It was as if he wanted to swallow the endless rain of steel. Even his own death was swallowed into his stomach. In the end, he did not even let his own Longinus go. Between the closed sharp teeth, the divine mark was shattered. Then, a loud sound that shook heaven and earth burst forth. Scales that were as sharp as blades grew out of his flesh and devoured the things that had killed him. The angel of death transformed once again. At the end of his giant tail, a sharp blade that resembled a spear extended out. The burning crown enveloped the 7-headed red dragon's head. The original sins of original sins of original sins and the monster born from the abyss had completed a complete fusion. Woodman, whose face had changed beyond recognition, hissed and spat out a scarlet breath filled with hatred at the enemy. But what responded to him was the mountain blades that extended out from the dark clouds in the sky. At the top of the Nautilus, Huaisha reached out and grabbed the invisible sword hilt. The clanging sound of countless iron crystals multiplying rang out continuously from the dark clouds. With the world as the furnace, the endless origin substance of darkness as the iron and lightning as the decoration, and the name of countless sacrifices, finally hatred and killing intent descended like a mountain. The heavenly imperial sword had reappeared in the world. Slash! The dark clouds that filled the sky were split open by the spread of the sharp blade. The spreading hurricane collapsed under the pressure of the mountain range. The earth wailed, and deep valleys split open. It was as if the high and mighty heavens had sent down a judgment. The world was in turmoil. The giant beast that had soared into the sky fell into the dust once again, its chest and abdomen split open under the heavenly imperial sword, which had been accumulating power for a long time. The iron scales and the bones condensed from endless death instantly collapsed like gravel. The blade of Longinus at the end was completely broken. Black blood spurted out like a waterfall. The heavenly imperial sword gradually dissipated into origin substance. The heavily injured giant beast was still wriggling, crawling on the ground, savagely gnawing at all the fragments. Under the cracks in its body, a strange light appeared in the shattered abyss projection. It hadn't died yet. Abandoning its broken body and ignoring the endless cannon fire, it once again slammed into the burning Nautilus. Behind the broken bone wings, black blood continuously spilled out and dissipated in the wind. Now, the entire sky had become their battlefield. Entanglement, collision, burning, explosion, claws and teeth collided with steel. Cannon fire scattered, plowing out cracks in the mortal world. Under the cold gaze of the stars, this belated trial finally came to an end of its own. When the behemoth fell from the sky again, only the sound of cracking was left in the silent wilderness. Under the burning of the cannon fire from the Nautilus, the giant beast finally ushered in its final collapse. Withering was like a chain reaction spreading in its body. When the bubble of the abyss shattered under the light of the kingdom of heaven, this path of original sin that sank into hell also ushered in its end. This is the end, Woodman. Huaishur stepped on the scorched earth and looked down indifferently at the dying giant dragon. The raised finger fell, like a judge striking an iron hammer. The last wailing harpoon fell from the sky, completely nailing the last remnant of the angel of death to the ground. Flames surged and swallowed everything, but the dying giant dragon was still struggling. Towards Huaishur, using the last of its strength, it raised its head and opened its mouth to bite. A mournful, bloody light flashed in the air. In Huaishur's hand, the long knife formed by countless steel crow feathers shook off the last of the black blood. The giant dragon's head fell from its neck just like that, rolling on the barren ground. There was no more sound, but after the neck of the giant beast of original sin split open in the spurting black blood, a blurry outline appeared again. It gave up the last of its strength and pounced straight at Huaishur. It did not care that the blade slashed horizontally and vertically, tearing apart the last remaining soul. Its 5 fingers were like knives. It pierced deeply into Huaishur's heart. It pierced through the heart. It's not over yet. Huaishur. Woodman's pale face emerged from the black blood, and he whispered in hatred, "I have a gift for you." At that moment, the last disaster appeared in his hand. Poison stream, inject. The crystal of disaster from Samel, the remaining essence of poison stream, that Woodman had. In an instant, it crossed the double isolation of the physical body, and the sacred mark seeped into the soul and spread. Another consciousness rose from the soul and gathered into Woodman's appearance again. It reached out to Huaishur's consciousness. It ignored the spontaneous defense of the soul and the storm of source form formed in Yun Zhongjuan's body. It was like peeling an onion. It broke through all the defenses layer by layer with ease and went to the deepest part of the soul and consciousness. Then endless memories came rushing to his face. The city shrouded in flames. The sky sprinkled with heavy rain. The young man wailing in the ruins. The grief-stricken woman hugging her husband's corpse. After losing everything, the withered bones burned to ashes in the cluster bombs, all the pain and suffering that Donbwa had once experienced, and even more distant pasts. The back view of Lord Yunjongjuan as he fell in the abyss, the regretful face of the Creator when he died, and countless souls who had surrendered and solidified, sinking into eternal oblivion, the world that was still shining behind them. And more deaths, those deaths that should not have happened, those despair that should not have happened, pain, countless pain, the blood that gathered into an ocean, the tears that turned into a rainstorm, the mountains formed by the sacrificed bones, and the storm that was stirred up by the echoing cries of grief. This was the world that had turned into hell. But at the end of the endless memories, in the innermost layer of this tragic world, Woodman seemed to see the blurry figure of a woman. She seemed to have sensed his gaze. She looked back, and there seemed to be a faint smile on her face. It was so mocking. But soon, everything in front of him dissipated. In the deepest part of his soul, only the glorious outline appeared again, illuminating his dull eyes. It was so familiar, so distinct, but it made him so terrified. "What is this?" Woodman murmured in a daze. He felt the wail of his soul shattering. "Of course, it's the Book of Destiny that you've been dreaming of." Huaisher lowered his head and whispered in the ears of the shocked solidifier, "Didn't I give it to you last time, Woodman? Why are you so disdainful of the authority that you've been dreaming of? You have to know that when it was closest to you, it was only a step away." Just like that, he enjoyed the way that face twitched. He observed the flow and changes of fear, confusion, panic, and anger. He listened to the mournful screams that burst out from the regret and madness in the deepest part of his soul. It was as pleasant as the sound of nature. When he struggled with all his might, he realized that he could no longer break free from Huaisher's hands. When he wanted to send the information that caused him to fall into the abyss of despair to the outside world, he realized that even the poison stream had been completely isolated by Huaisher's body. This was a trap. It had been one from the beginning, but when he realized it, it was already too late. The reckoning will eventually begin. Woodman. Huaisher reached out, grabbed his neck, and lifted him from the ground. He told him, "You will be the first. You don't have to be upset or regret this, because one day the Golden Dawn will be destroyed like you, just like how you destroyed the Republic. And on your corpses, a new Republic will be born. This is the ending that you are destined to have in the Book of Destiny." Under the rope of sorrow, Woodman let out a hoarse roar and voice from his throat, but it could not be heard clearly. Just like that, under the witness of the stars, he was gradually hanged by the gallows. The scattered black blood was burned by the lightning and flames and quickly evaporated, unable to escape. "Now it's time to part." Huaisher nodded and politely said goodbye. "Thank you for the gift. I also have a gift for you." As he raised his hand and spread out his 5 fingers, the light of countless stars fell. They formed a colorful packaging box. After the bow tied by the colorful foil slowly loosened, it revealed the bright and beautiful flames inside. This was the last strand of Gaia's blood that was specially prepared for Woodman. "Make a wish, Mr. Woodman." Huaisher smiled and told him, "From now on, happy death anniversary." Just like that, he blew out the faint light of the candle. At that moment, the light in the box disappeared, leaving only a small silver mirror. Like a young girl's dressing mirror, it had an exquisite edge. The smooth surface of the mirror reflected Woodman's distorted face, his trembling eyes, and the figure that was gradually appearing in his eyes. A gentle lullaby sounded in his ears again. It crossed a long and distant path, coming from the deepest part of hell and pain. The blonde woman in the white dress looked back from her eternal sleep. Her green eyes stared at Woodman's appearance, but there was no hatred. They were still so clear. The authoritative relic from the celestial genealogy, the mirror of day and night created by the miracle of the road of transformation. However, unlike the ferocity and madness of the black deity, it was like a mother, always compassionate and gentle. This was the healing harbor of all souls in the world and the resting place of all hesitation and despair. White Deity Pelagia, you're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.